Hi, my name's Terry, and this is a story. It's not a story about how I ended up in this skeevy little room here in Florida. That's a whole long story that's not interesting or salacious or it's just long and boring. So we're going to ignore that. So many years ago, back when I was young, I was taller, I was thinner, I had estrogen, I had a flat stomach. Those were good times. I was living in California, and in California, I worked for a couple of doctors. They would work all day, and I would take care of their son. And they lived up in the foothills above Santa Barbara in a town called Goleta. And it was a beautiful, beautiful home. They were rented it until they bought a home. And so up there, it was kind of up on a hill a little bit, and then one of the things I noticed is there was kind of a drop off behind the house, and then there was like a ravine, which in Santa Barbara sometimes didn't have any water in it because it was desert out there. So I remember, I made a mental note every day that the little boy, because he was walking and talking, if he was ever going to escape, he was going to go down, and I was afraid he was going to go down that, and then away he would go. So and he did not do that. He grew up to be a fine individual. And years and years and years passed, and I was no longer young or tall or anything like that, and I'm out of estrogen. And I was talking to my boss one day, and I'd worked for him for about 20 years. And in the 20 years that I worked for him, never, not once, did he ever recommend a book or talk about a book. We never discussed books. We didn't discuss movies. We discussed work. Nice man. But he walked by the office one day where I was working, and he said, Tare, I read a book, and it's called I'll See You in the Dark. And he goes, it's about your old stomping grounds out there in California. And I said, oh, that's cool. And I didn't think anything more about it. He goes, it's true crime. He goes, I know you like that true crime crazy stuff. He goes, but I'll lend it to you. Okay. So he gives me this book, and I dive right in. And so I read the whole book, and all of a sudden, I remembered there was a day, a beautiful Santa Barbara day, of course, and I had worked up there for about a year and a half, and there was a second part of the house, and there was a window in the kitchen, and then over there was the ravine, and over there was the back of the house. And I was standing in the kitchen with the little boy, and we were talking about lunch, and out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody walk by that window, and there was another building there, so there was no reason, for a guy to be, or somebody to be in that breezeway between that and the garage. There was no reason. And it was weird because I didn't think, it's like maybe I saw it, maybe I didn't. But something inside of me said, call the cops. And so I called the police, and gets even weirder. The weird thing is that the police showed up, I mean, a bunch of cops, all of them with their weapons drawn, walking around the house, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've made a really big deal about nothing. But they were, and they do, where did you see it, and how did you see it, and what did you see, and did you get a description? And I said, no, it was a figure that went through and by the window, as I don't know, it just kind of looked in and left. I said, I might even be mistaken. And the way they took this so seriously back then surprised me, and I didn't understand. But I guess those police may have known, or there had already been that killing of the couple in Goleta. And so after I read this book, I thought, oh my God, that's like the perfect, because he would stalk people for days or weeks or whatever, and he would look in and he'd know the way they move, what their story was, what they were doing, and then he would always make sure he had an escape, like down a hill and out a ravine. It would have been perfect for him. So I think maybe that gut feeling, that moment inside of me that said call the cops, might have scared him off, like he wasn't going to attempt that again in that particular house because they were already aware. So anyway, that's my weird spooky story about the Golden State Killer. And I honestly think, I'm not trying to overblow this, but I really think it was a brush with evil, and I'm very grateful that I followed my gut, which is what I always tell my kids and my grandkids to do. Follow your gut. Your gut knows what your head is denying. That's my story.